Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair explains how widespread the wildfires are, which are scorching so many regions of the country. A former CBC journalist who spoke out at the National Citizens Inquiry says the public broadcaster aired a lot of government propaganda during the pandemic. And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on the newly elected Smith government to reduce its cabinet.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Federal ministers met in Ottawa and virtually to discuss support measures for so many Canadian communities which have been hit hard by devastating wildfires. Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair says a number of provinces are currently burning.
British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Ontario, and most recently Nova Scotia and New Brunswick have all experienced serious wildfires that have prompted the evacuation of tens of thousands of Canadians, including from many Indigenous communities. To date, there have already been 1,826 fires nationally so far this year, and approximately 2.7 million hectares have burned. To put that in some context, that's over 5 million football fields. The Government Operations Centre, which is embedded within Public Safety Canada, coordinates the federal response to emergencies to ensure that we are ready to help should any province or territory require federal assistance. I have already been speaking to my counterparts and municipal leaders in some of the more heavily affected regions to ensure that they have the support that they need, and there is close collaboration between the Federal Government Operations Centre and emergency operations centres in each of the provinces impacted.
The wildfires continue to rage in Nova Scotia. Around 21,000 displaced homeowners in the Halifax area are wondering if their pets are still alive, while others want to get to their homes to retrieve important medication. Firefighters, however, say it's still far too dangerous. So far, more than 200 homes and cottages have been destroyed.
It's a site of tragedy, right? And there's widespread destruction, and at the same time there's a level of randomness that comes with wildfires when they hit the urban interface where people live. So there are properties that are unharmed and in close proximity to properties that are destroyed. It's terrible to see. There's these are people's homes. This is a community, and it's really confusing to myself as a layperson and a resident of the regional municipality to see how this community was impacted by this fire. I cannot speculate on when this fire will be under control. I would encourage all of us to be ready for a long firefight.
Well, right now I think we're very blessed. My wife and my daughter and myself are safe and sound in a hotel, so everything that's important to us is in good shape. The rest of the stuff, well, it's physical possessions, and we're not going to get upset. It's either there when we come back, or it's missing and we make a claim. So we're very grateful for what we have.
Alberta emergency officials say there are 61 wildfires burning in our province, with 16 being out of control. Firefighters have responded to 553 wildfires so far this year, which have burned just over 1.1 million hectares. Bree Hutchinson with Alberta Emergency Management Agency says more evacuation alerts have now turned into evacuation orders in the northern parts of Alberta.
This evacuation order is now in effect for Fort Chipewyan, including the Mikisew Cree First Nation, Fort Chipewyan Métis Nation, and Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation. Please check the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo's website for the most current updates on this evacuation at rmwb.ca/FortChip. As of last night, a phased evacuation was underway with help from the Canadian Armed Forces, which provided an aircraft to support the evacuation efforts. Today, the remainder of evacuees are in the process of evacuating by air and boat. We are grateful for the Armed Forces' support, along with that of the thousands of firefighters from near and far that have been working tirelessly on the situation over the past several weeks.
Just over 2,600 firefighters from across Canada, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand have been helping to battle the blazes here in our province. praying for more rain in many areas in the north, especially across the rest of the country. Well, here in southwestern Alberta, it was slightly cooler today with some light showers in some areas. Jeanette Roche is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, the moisture may be sticking around for a few more days?
Yeah, and if not the moisture, then at least the clouds, Hal. Now, tonight we are still looking at a chance of showers early this evening with an overnight low of 9 degrees. As we move into Friday, we are going to be seeing those temperatures remain in the high teens, looking at a high of 19 for Friday. Those clouds, we're going to see cloudy conditions for the next couple of days. And as we move into the weekend, that's when those temperatures will rise again to the mid-20s. But we won't see rain again after tonight until at least a Sunday evening. So I'll be back later in the show, Hal, to give you that 7-day forecast as well as a look at the national forecast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. 16 school children and 1 adult were taken to hospital after a fall from a Winnipeg tourist attraction on Wednesday. Hospital officials say most of the kids are expected to recover, and the incident could have been so much worse.
I don't know what led to the fall. When I arrived on scene, there was a number of patients that had fallen from a structure, and my task was to make sure that they were all triaged, transported, and taken to hospital for treatment. They fell from a structure that was approximately 16 to 18 feet tall. I'm not sure what exactly that structure was initially. I was just focused on the patients that were on scene. Thankfully, we don't have very many mass casualty incidents that we have to deal with, but we do train for it regularly, and everyone on scene was well prepared, and we triaged everybody in a timely fashion. We determined who needed to be transported first, and those went out in the first transporting ambulances on scene. And we had every patient out of there and to hospital within an hour.
The testimony of a former CBC journalist, Rodney Palmer, to the National Citizens Inquiry went viral on Twitter. It was thanks in part to a tweet by U.S. presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. During his testimony, Palmer said the CBC was transformed from a news-gathering agency into a propaganda machine for the federal government. The tweet by Kennedy had more than 1.6 million impressions, close to 27,000 likes, and more than 10,400 retweets. Now here's a portion of Palmer's testimony from the recent National Citizens Inquiry, where he references CBC host Katie Simpson and an interview she did with Conservative MP Marilyn Gladue.
The anti-vaxxer became the boogeyman in this story, and Marilyn Gladue held herself extremely well. And at one point, Katie said, "Are any of your unvaccinated colleagues going to try to get into the House of Commons?" So I thought, wow, you've just framed them as like break-in artists or petty criminals here. And Marilyn Gladue answered, probably not. They need a passport to get in, and they'll never get past the guard. And then she said, will you go to the Parliament? And Marilyn Gladue very coyly said, well, show up on the day and see if I come. And she stopped the interview and repeated the question and said, this is a matter of public safety. Are you going to come? So in that moment, she framed every unvaccinated person, including her guest on the show, as a danger to public safety. Katie Simpson had no evidence, and still has no evidence, that an unvaccinated person is any more likely to transmit COVID than a vaccinated person. And we now know that there's really no difference. And if anything, if you have natural immunity, you're less likely to get it or spread it. She had no scientific evidence. She had no basis of it. That's because this was not news gathering. She was practicing propaganda.
Anita Krishna was a TV newscast director who says she was fired from her job with Global Vancouver. She says it was because she questioned the narrative her employer was pushing and not offering proper balance in regards to COVID-19 related stories. Krishna says red flags went up when all of the catchphrases started coming out. She says it was almost like they were scripted.
Everything was coming so fast and furious, right? Why were we saying, okay, self-isolate, lock down, don't travel, extend spring break, keep your kids at home, kids are getting this. We were starting to say flatten the curve, social distance. We were starting to say all those things without evolving into that. Those kinds of things take time to evolve. All catchphrases and things like that don't come out of the gate day one. Why did it come out of the gate day one? That's what made me question it. Wow, it's almost like, I'm not saying this is what happened, but it's almost like the script was written.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Anita Krishna, former TV newscast director, and BCN's Naveen Day coming up later in our broadcast. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on Alberta Premier Daniel Smith to pick a smaller cabinet to save taxpayers money. The UCP, which won a majority on Monday, currently has 25 cabinet ministers. The CTF notes that back in 1992, Premier Ralph Klein reduced his cabinet from 26 to 17 ministers. Alberta cabinet ministers are paid just over $181,000 a year. Chris Sims is Alberta director of the CTF, and she joins us now from Lethbridge. Chris, you say that cutting cabinet will make it more efficient?
Well, it reduces the number of people who have to pass paper around because there's fewer hands on deck, but they're able to still accomplish their goals. Keep in mind, these folks have big staff, and they also have folks in the bureaucracy who can help them as deputy ministers and assistants. So we want to see more efficiency in government. Also, it reduces the costs because, of course, cabinet ministers are paid just over $180,000 per year. So we'd be saving money on that bump up that cabinet ministers get.
Now, when Rachel Notley was premier, the NDP actually had a smaller cabinet than what the UCP currently has?
Yeah, we found that very interesting. So when former NDP Premier Rachel Notley was voted out of office in 2019, she actually had a cabinet of 22 people. So at resolution, when they actually had to have the election this time around, their cabinet was 25 people. So we're calling on the UCP and Premier Danielle Smith to take a long, hard look at that and shrink the size of cabinet. You know, folks here in Alberta, Hal, we're frugal-minded and we're hardworking. We want to see those values reflected in the size of cabinet.
Thanks so much, Chris. That was Chris Sims, Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Lethbridge. By the way, the UCP won a slim majority on Monday night by taking 49 seats, while the NDP won 38. And speaking of which, two of the UCP candidates who lost their seats at the legislature to the NDP candidates lost by less than 50 votes. Whitney Isaac of Calgary Glenmore lost her seat by 30 votes, while Tyler Shandro lost his seat by a very narrow 7-vote margin in the riding of Calgary-Acadia. According to Robin Bell of Elections Alberta, this means there will be an automatic recount of votes for each riding.
Between now and June 8th, we will conduct the recount of any of those electoral divisions where it was less than 100 ballots. So I can confirm that was Calgary-Acadia and Calgary-Glenmore. And now there were some that were close, but just not close by that standard. So those ones won't get an automatic recount. However, after June 8th, once the official results are released, then we enter an 8-day period where candidates can request a judicial recount. And to do that, they'll need to make an application to the Court of the King's Bench. So there will still be an opportunity to do that. They'll just have to wait until after June 8th.
Alberta Teachers Association President Jason Schilling says he's looking forward to working with the new government following Monday night's election. Schilling says the hope is that there will be a collaborative effort to work towards some of the issues and concerns teachers have. He says there's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
We're looking to address class sizes. We're looking to address the complexity of needs that our students are coming into our classrooms, not only learning needs, but also social emotional needs. Counselors, psychologists, therapists to work with our students. There's a lot of support that is needed for our students, especially after the pandemic. There are still a lot of concerns around curriculum, the resources for that, the implementation of the curriculum, and then looking at the funding model that has been affecting larger jurisdictions that are seeing an increasing number of students, and smaller ones we're creating a have-not situation with funding in our province, and we need to find a way to make sure that every student is seen as an investment in this province.
Schilling says he's spoken with Premier Danielle Smith in the past on these issues and hopes relationship building is a priority for the next education minister. Cardston residents recently let their voices be heard during a plebiscite vote on the sale of alcohol in the town. A total of 925 people voted, with 53% saying yes and 47% voting no. If a bylaw is passed, it would mean liquor would be allowed in restaurants and recreational facilities. The purpose of the vote was to help inform the town council what the public opinion on the issue was. Cardston Council will soon be mulling over the results of the vote. Up next for Cardston is a public hearing where residents can express their concerns in regards to the potential of allowing alcohol into the town. In the first 3 months of 2023, the Better Business Bureau Scam Tracker has reported job scam losses totaling $840,000. Wes LaFortune, the manager of communications and media for the Southern Alberta BBB, highlighted a few of the key findings of their report.
What we found at Better Business Bureau is quite a sharp increase in reports to our site, which is scam tracker, which tracks scams across North America. And that was, as you said, about a 250% increase, the loss of nearly $1 million just for the first 3 months of the year. I always mention this when I talk about scams and fraud, but basically about only 5% of people actually make reports.
According to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, 11,435 reports were made, totaling $22.2 million in losses from March of 2020 through 2023. The Alberta Motorcycle Safety Association is reminding people to drive responsibly and accordingly following Motorcycle Safety Awareness last month. Leanne Langlois, the group's president, says we really need to be mindful of bikers on the road, especially with the warmer summer weather coming up. She says to always give yourself lots of time and to follow the rules of the road.
Tailgating is not legal in Alberta, nor is speeding. So we want to make sure that we are all being good stewards for traffic safety. What we suggest for everybody, whether they're a new rider or even a seasoned rider, is there's a lot of motorcycle training out there. So for new riders, it's going to give you those basic skills to get out on the road. That's going to teach you how to approach intersections, what happens if there's gravel, emergency maneuvers and things like that. And those are life-saving skills at the end of the day.
Langlois says so far this year there have been 9 motorcycle fatalities here in the province. New West Theatre is back for another season of great music and acting. Now, last year the organization made a plea for help as they might not have been able to keep their doors open. Fortunately, the company has weathered the storm financially and is excited to begin a new season. Kelly Ray, the artistic director of New West Theatre, explains what theatre lovers can expect this upcoming season, including a production called Legends of Rock and Country, featuring the likes of Fleetwood Mac, Dolly Parton, and the man in black himself, Mr. Johnny Cash.
Peppered in our shows are a number of tributes and impersonations, some serious, some comedic. So we've decided to take all of that and build a whole show around these legendary impersonations, knowing that audiences really have come to love, for example, Devin Brain as Johnny Cash, so many of our other performers who have those impersonations that they have been doing for a number of years that sometimes comedic, sometimes serious, and audiences really, really gravitate and really seem to love those types of performances. So we've decided to create a whole show around that idea.
New West Theatre has been producing shows in Lethbridge with their special brand of theatre for over 30 years now. A Nanaimo, BC woman recently took a little tumble but still won the big cheese, so to speak, at a unique event. Delaney Irving knocked herself out rolling down a hill in the annual cheese rolling event in Gloucester, England, but still managed to pull out the win as she rolled across the finish line unconscious. Competitors raced down the steep Cooper's Hill trying to catch a 7-pound wheel of cheese, with the winner claiming the prize. Ouch. Now, by the way, we're happy to report that Irving is okay following her nasty spill. Congratulations to Lena Irving, and cheddar luck next time to their competitors. Well, we had lots of cloud cover and cooler temperatures in southwestern Alberta. There's a chance of more light showers developing. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. Well, it was a slightly cooler day in Lethbridge today with more light showers. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, our farmers should be pretty happy since more moisture may be on the way.
Yeah, true, but perhaps not as much as initially forecasted. Now, we are still seeing a 30% chance this evening. And then over the weekend, mostly just cloudy conditions. High of 19 on Friday, 24 for a high on Saturday. And then as we reach Sunday, back up to 25 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. We are not expected to see the rain again at this point until Sunday evening, when we'll see a 40% chance of showers. And then on Monday night, a 60% chance. Monday, mainly cloudy skies, though, high of 28, high of 24 degrees. On Tuesday, and next Wednesday looking at a high of 26. So we just are going through that strange little teen period when we're in the average range, and then we're going to shoot back up to above seasonal for the weekend and into next week. So average high for this time of year, 20 degrees, average low 7, 32. That was our high temperature on this day. That happened back in 1986, and in 1951 we were sitting at -2. That was chilly. Okay, the sun rose this morning at 5:29, sunset this evening right at 9:30. We're sitting at 16 hours and 1 minute of daylight, 1 minute longer than we were yesterday. Okay, Victoria, mainly sunny skies, looking at a high of 21 degrees. Very windy, though, in the Wantafuca Strait, looking at 20 to 40 to 60K winds. That is a very windy place, that Wantafuca Strait. 20 degrees for a high in Vancouver, mainly sunny skies. Now, Edmonton, going to be seeing sunny conditions, but hazy, along with some local smoke around noon time. 22 degrees for an expected high, looking at a high of 19 in Calgary tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, Saskatoon is expecting a severe thunderstorm this evening. So what happened is some thunderstorms have been developing as an upper level disturbance has been tracking its way across the southwestern portion of the province. So it's going to be making way for some possibly severe thunderstorms. We're looking at chances of rain in both Saskatoon and Regina, and a risk of thunderstorms tomorrow as well. High of 26 expected in Saskatoon, 27 in Regina. 32 degrees expected in Winnipeg. That's going to be a hot one. Mainly sunny skies. There are also very high humidexes as well. Toronto, looking at mainly sunny skies tomorrow, high of 31. Now, Toronto is in a 2-day heat event, as well as the rest of the central part of the country, looking at very high humidity. Also, Toronto, I should mention, with the high humidity, they are expected, those pollution levels are expected to rise, and that's going to reduce some air quality there as well. And the rest of the areas looking at highs of 33, Montreal and Ottawa, mainly sunny skies, high humidexes. They are also under heat warnings. Now, as we look to Fredericton, we're looking at some chance of rain tomorrow, high of 21 degrees. Halifax could be seeing some local smoke from the wildfires there, especially along the Atlantic coast. Otherwise, looking at showers tomorrow in Halifax, also hazy conditions, 27 for a high, 14 for a high in Charlottetown, looking at 2 to 4 millimeters of rain, and 60% chance of drizzle in St. John's, Newfoundland, 8 degrees, but 13 inland. There you have it. That is your forecast.
The U.S. government is turning up the heat on an airbag inflator company that is refusing to issue a recall despite deaths and injuries linked to its product. ARC Automotive has been ordered to answer questions under oath and has been threatened with severe fines if it doesn't respond. Government officials say a recall is needed of 67 million potentially dangerous airbag inflators because of 2 deaths in Canada and the United States, along with at least 7 injuries linked to the inflators. The ARC inflators can explode with too much force, expelling shrapnel in the process. The U.S. Supreme Court is reviving whistleblower lawsuits against Safeway and SuperValu. The suits claim that both overcharged government healthcare programs for generic prescription drugs by hundreds of millions of dollars. The cases stem from the company's efforts to match a 2006 decision by Walmart to offer 30-day supplies of many generic drugs for only $4. The suits claim Safeway and SuperValu matched the discounted price at their pharmacies, but then reported a much higher price when seeking reimbursement. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 100 points on the day to finish at 19,672. The Dow was up 153 points to 33,061. The S&P 500 was up 41 on the day to 4221, and the Nasdaq was up 165 points to 13,100. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 201 to $70.10 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 11 cents to $2.16 US. Gold was down a cent to $19.7760 US an ounce, and silver was also down a cent to $23.85 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.05 per bushel, barley's at $8.82, canola's at $14.56, and corn is at $10.08 per bushel. Live cattle were up $5.78 to $174.90. Feeder cattle August contract was up $2.48 to $241.65, and lean hogs were up 98 cents to $83.55. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.36 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Alberta emergency officials say there are 61 wildfires burning in our province, with 16 being out of control. Firefighters have responded to 553 wildfires so far this year, which has scorched just over 1.1 million hectares of land. Just over 2,600 firefighters from across Canada, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand have been helping to battle the blazes here in our province. A former TV newscast director spoke out at the National Citizens Inquiry into the government's handling of the pandemic. She says the broadcaster she was working for was not balanced in its coverage during the COVID-19 pandemic. Watch the insightful interview with Anita Krishna and BCN's Naveen Day coming up shortly. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.